The Orlando Magic have hit the All-Star break, not exactly where they wanted to be. The state of the Orlando Magic, how we got here, and what happens next today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is February 13th, 2026. My name is Philip Rosberg. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, it is the state of the Orlando Magic, the season so far, how the Magic got here, where they're at, and what happens next. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic even bigger part of your day by being one of our Orlando Magic dailies, our everydayers who listen 5 days a week, who listen when we do weekend episodes, which we will not be doing this weekend. When we listen right when we upload, listen as part of your daily podcast rotation, listen as your first listen of the day, who are part of our Everydayer Club. We want to thank everyone who's made the Locked On Magic community so great, and thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Orlando Magic fans had a lot of expectation for the season. Just plain and simple. I felt it. You felt it. I see it in the traffic numbers. Like, there was a groundswell of excitement. There was a groundswell of belief in this team. We'd seen this team grow up from a 25-win team to a 35-win team to a 45-win team to 41 to a perennial playoff team to a team that had two clear-cut all-star level players, something the Magic haven't had really since T-Mac and Grant Hill. No offense to Jameer Nelson and Rashard Lewis and Hedo Turkoglu. This was a team that had all the pieces. They had a coach that we liked, a culture that we liked, everything that endears fans to a team that seemed to put them on this meteoric rise. And then when the Magic hit a wall or hit an obstacle they needed to climb over, they put the investment and made the kind of trade that said that tells their fans we are all in. The hype that we said, that fans said, the hype that media put on this team, the hype that the team put on themselves felt very warranted, because if the 2025 team was better than the 2024 team that earned the 5 seed, that won 47 games and only was 7th and 41-41 because of injuries, then this was the move that would take them to the next level. We saw so clearly in that series against Boston that Orlando didn't have enough to compete with championship level teams. Now, Desmond Bane alone wasn't always going to fix all of that. It would still take another evolution in Paolo Banchero's game, another evolution in Franz Wagner's game, a healthy Jalen Suggs. There is still work to do, and as I said at the beginning of the season, the goal is obviously to get out of the first round, and I would still say that is the goal. The goal is obviously to get out of the first round, but the goal is also to play a championship-level team, the Knicks, the Cavs, the Pistons now, whoever it might be. Play one of those championship-level teams and show that the only thing that you're missing is experience. Is the having been through the long playoff battle. Because once you get to the conference finals, anything can happen. But there is another level of basketball that this team hasn't experienced yet. Maybe those dreams are still out there. Maybe the Magic can accomplish those goals. Maybe the Magic get a wacky first round series. Maybe they face, Toronto. No offense to Toronto. They got 2 All-Stars. Maybe they face a Toronto team that doesn't have like the top end stars in a 4-5 or 3-6 matchup and battle them win that series, and then play a Knicks or a Pistons or a Cavs. And we see just how far the gap is and decide, well, this is what we need to do to close that gap. Let's be clear, even with all the mess of the season, that is still out there. But as we sit here at the All-Star break, I have to say the state of the Orlando Magic is not in good shape. Not in good shape, at least for a team that we believe was on the track to winning a championship. That while those goals are still achievable, are still out there, it does not feel like the Magic will reach those goals. It certainly doesn't feel like the Magic are getting home court advantage. That's we'll get to that in a minute, but it does not feel like the Magic are pointing in that direction. Unlike last year, when it was just like, oh, just these boxes need to be checked, and this team is back to sort of contender status. This year has seen the Magic lose so much of what made them endearing. Before I say this, thank you all for listening. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for putting up with me. I am an optimist. I will fully admit that is one of my blind spots. I believe in the best of things. But I will undoubtedly say this season has been a disappointment, and your disappointment as a fan in this team and your frustration is warranted. I would honestly tell you that being in that locker room, that is the feeling that just feels so pervasive around the organization. They cannot figure out why things haven't clicked this year. Yes, there have been injuries again, and we do need to account for that, and we do need to say, why are these injuries occurring, or what effect have these injuries had? But the bottom line is this: even with all the injuries that the Magic had last year, they were still second in the league in defensive rating. We still had this clear understanding of their identity and what success looked like. This year, despite being significantly better than last season, they're 3 games better than last season at game 53. They're 1 game behind 2024 and that hallmark season. Despite being on these paces, I would say, okay, there's still time and still the ability to turn things around and have a special end to the season, if not a special season as a whole, but still accomplish some of these goals. The stats do not tell that story. The Orlando Magic, who were second in the league in defensive rating last year, 5th in the league 2 years ago, are sitting in 14th in defensive rating at 114 points per 100 possessions. 14th. Everything the Magic were doing was based on having an elite defense. And while they are coming off 3 elite defensive games before Wednesday's loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, that has been the exception, not the rule. The Magic gave up 120 points per 100 possessions just 8 times all of last year. I believe they're at 15 through 53 games. 15. That includes Wednesday's game, by the way. And maybe that's just an evolution in offense, but because even the Orlando Magic are better on offense now. The Orlando Magic's 113.6 offensive rating is 19th in the league right now. 19th. If the Magic do this, they conquer the worst streak in the NBA, except for the Sacramento Kings 14-game losing streak right now. That they conquer the most embarrassing streak in the NBA, not having an offense outside the bottom 10 since Dwight Howard in 2012. But being that much better in offense doesn't seem worth the cost of not being as good defensively. And so we watch this team every night, and the things that we thought defined them, their effort, their energy, their intensity, their defense, no longer define this team. This is a team seeking an identity. Desmond Bane, the newcomer on the team, honestly, probably the leader voice in the locker room, perhaps. Wendell Carter, I think, still has a little bit of that role too, but Desmond Bane is, at least for the media, the guy we turn to for perspective. It's him and Mo Wagner. Because Mo Wagner's been out of the league. He understands how special this is. Desmond Bane has been to the second round. He understands the work it takes to get there that this team doesn't have in their experience logs. When we asked Desmond Bane what this team's identity is, he's a newcomer. He wasn't here the last 3 years. He doesn't know what this team is supposed to be. And he asked, what identity? What's our identity? I would say he is, as much as I've observed anyone, as much as anyone working to find that out, working to figure this out. And look, he's got work to do on that front too. But the Magic aren't where they want to be because they aren't who they want to be. And that is disappointing. Just plain and simple, that is disappointing. We know the Magic can be a lot better. We've seen them be a lot better. We've seen them be I wouldn't say an elite team, but we have seen them play elite level basketball for long stretches, for the whole month of November, in fact. We've seen it in instances, we've seen it in glimpses, but it hasn't come together. And 53 games into the season, it's hard to believe it will come together. And that leads to the uncertainty of the moment. Where the Magic are at and what's on the line and what needs to change over these last 29 games. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The winter games are officially here, and if you're like anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. It's skeleton season, gentlemen, and that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches, the intensity of skeleton, the fun of the luge relay, which was awesome yesterday. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there is no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is also brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, life skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches, and with sponsored jobs, your posts get seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We want to thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. If you're looking to take your Locked On fandom to another level, we're happy to introduce the Everydayer Club. The Everydayer Club is your access to more Locked On. You get access to the ad-free audio channel of this podcast, so you don't have to listen to those pesky ads. And you'll get access to the Locked On Discord server, which has a specific group for Locked On Magic fans. We're small and growing, where I post my 3 thoughts after every quarter of every game the rest of the way. And you'll get to chat with me and ask questions directly to me. I am tentatively planning to do a mailbag episode or do a live episode. I'm thinking on Wednesday if I do it. So if I end up doing that or any future live episodes, if you ask a question or you put a mailbag question in the Discord server, you're guaranteed to have that answer. That's going to be one of the perks that we'll give here. And I'm still thinking of perks to give to my Everydayer Club members. Check it out again at lockedonmagic.supercast.com. That's lockedonmagic.supercast.com. Let's get the nuts and bolts out of the way. Now that we are at the All-Star break, the Orlando Magic sit at 28-25. Again, that is 3 games ahead of last year when they were 25-28 at the All-Star break. 1 game behind where they were in 2024 when they were 29-24. Obviously had great ends to the season Great ends to the season after the All-Star break. That is one thing that I think this team is banking on, and we'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in a minute. One thing this team is banking on is that now that they're healthy, they are going to have this incredible kick to end the season, to get to the break. This also tells me something else, that despite all the struggle, despite all the frustration of the season, despite everything that has befallen this team and has made things difficult, the Magic are still pretty good. If this is their bad, if like this season is a disaster, and like, I wouldn't call it a disaster, but I wouldn't call it good. I'd call this season a failure. Not a failure at this point, but certainly disappointing. Then there is something on this team that can develop into a good team. There is something on this team that can spin forward. So again, this is my optimism talking, maybe. But if this is the floor for this group, if this is as bad as it could be, then there's still opportunity to get better. If this is as bad as they're going to be for the next 3 years, then there's still a lot to build and grow on. I'm not, I mean, look, be pessimistic. This year has stunk. This year has been frustrating. Expectation is the thief of joy. And we expected this team to be a lot better than this. So I'm not absolving them of that. I'm not here saying like, oh, just be happy that they're over 500. They're still in 7th and they're still in the race. No, this team has fallen well short of expectation. And frankly, yes, be disappointed because this is a bad season. We know they could be a lot better and a lot more consistent. And the hope, I think, is the rest of the season we see that play out. This will not make this a successful season. But the Magic are sitting a game and a half behind the Philadelphia 76ers for 6th. They're 3 games back of the Toronto Raptors for 5th. 5 games back of Cleveland for 4th. I think that'll be a little bit of a stretch. But let's keep this real. The Magic are 3 games behind Toronto for 5th, 3 games ahead of Charlotte for 9th. I think that the Magic's goal for the rest of the season, I will deem the post All-Star break a success if the Magic avoid the play-in. Nobody wants to play in. Nobody wants to do the play-in again. You know, beating Miami 6 times is going to be hard. We've seen them enough. But getting to 6, even though Philadelphia I think is pretty good, getting to 6, that is a goal this team can achieve. And it can achieve it because the road ahead is not so tough. And we'll talk about bigger picture stuff here in a minute, but the road ahead, not some disaster. I'll point this out too. Since the 4-game losing streak, the Magic have won 5 of their last 8. But if you look at the road ahead, hey, you got this road trip coming up: Sacramento, Phoenix, Clippers, Lakers. Kings are on a 14-game losing streak. We'll raise alarm bell. I mean, I don't want to raise alarm bells. First game out of the break is always kind of funky and weird, but the Magic should beat the Kings next Thursday. The Clippers are a good team because Kawhi Leonard's playing really well. But outside of him, they're 6-4 their last 10. They won the other day. Outside of him, they feel very beatable. And again, Kawhi Leonard's really, really good, and the Magic will have to handle and deal with him. But after that, you got Houston, Detroit, Washington, Dallas. That, again, like I said, got to go 8-4 in the 12 games starting at the beginning of the homestand. You're 3-1. So you got to go 5-3 the rest of the way. If we mark off the Lakers maybe as a loss, who knows? You could win a lot of those games. After this road trip, you do not have a road trip longer than 2 games the rest of the season. Now, you still got some tough games in there. You're going to play at Charlotte. You're going to play on a Jersey retirement day. You're going to play the Thunder. You still got the Thunder one more time. But if you look at the overall, they still got, my computer cut out there. Still got 2 games against Sacramento, 2 games against Washington. You've got a game against New Orleans, a game against Indiana, both games against Dallas. You dropped a game against Milwaukee you shouldn't have dropped. Orlando still has 2 games against Detroit. They got the closer against Boston. Who knows if that'll be important. Still got a game against Houston. Still got a game against Cleveland. But really, among the elite teams, Detroit, those 3 games against Detroit and Oklahoma City are the only ones really left against the elite teams. Now, you compare that to their competition. Philadelphia, Orlando has a 497. Orlando does have a tougher remaining schedule than both Philadelphia and Miami, but just by a little bit. Philadelphia still has both their games against the Jazz. They still have the Nets. So Philadelphia, like, their schedule lightens up. They have a very road-heavy end of their schedule. But at the end of the day, I know I've always said this. It's not about them. It's about us. It's about the Magic. And this All-Star break needs to be a reset. It needs to be a refresh. Because, again, there is very little the Magic do other than just blow the doors open, get to the 4 seed somehow to make us feel like, oh, this season's a success. And even if that happens, I don't think this season's a success. But there's still opportunity to make something. And I know people hate when I say this. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people. And I'm like, look, this season's a disappointment. We'll assess it at the end of the season. Right now that we're in the middle of it, you got to make the most of the time you have left. And right now, the goal for the Magic is to prove to everyone that the start of the season, that those first 53 games were injuries. They got to prove to everyone, no, we are the team you thought we were. We were just hurt by injuries. We're just hit by these injuries, and we couldn't find ourselves. The Magic have a lot here. The Magic have a lot to play with and a lot that they can be. And they still have a lot in front of them. And they have a schedule that is manageable. I wouldn't say it's easy. I wouldn't say it's difficult. But they have the ability to still make something of this season. And so, yes, there is disappointment. Yes, there is frustration. But there's still opportunity. And we could evaluate the whole season after it's done. And again, disappointment's the right emotion. I'm not dismissing your disappointment. I'm not dismissing your frustration. I am agreeing with it. But we got to forget that for now. There's 23 games ahead of this team. 23 games to reset the narrative. Because if they don't, there's a lot of things we need to talk about. So let's talk about what happens next. Because this season is no longer about this season. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part, not always so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. When I travel, I always think, what sporting event can I go to? When I travel for fun. When I'm traveling for work, I'm going to a sporting event because I'm traveling for work. But actually, I'm traveling for work in March, going to the Minnesota-Milwaukee back-to-back coming up in March. And it just so happens, the reason why I wanted to do this trip was because my Northwestern Wildcats are playing the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I've always wanted to go to the bar in Williams Arena, and now I get my opportunity. And I am scouring Game Time, trying to make sure I get the best price on tickets to see my Wildcats in their final regular season game of this cursed season for Northwestern. Game Time has everything that I'm looking for, all in pricing up front, digital views from my seat so I know exactly the view that I'm getting. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. I remember during the rebuilding years while I was doing this podcast, and there was very little to talk about during the season. And, everyone wanted to talk about tanking and all that stuff. And I would always say this, and I know it annoyed everybody when I said this. And I would even say this like during the early Paolo years. I'd say, like, look, this season's not about this season. And it annoyed everybody because, like, hey, they want the season to matter. You want games to matter. You don't want to be told that you're playing for a mythical future, some unknown thing. You want the thing in front of you to work. So I'm going to say this again. And this is not a good thing anymore. Like, it was a good thing back then. It was a good thing back when, you were selling hope and you were selling the lottery and you're saying like, okay, what do we actually have in these players? But I hate to say it, as much as I am optimistic and as much as I believe that there's still something to achieve this season feels like a lame duck season. And more than anything, that is the biggest thing the Magic have to overcome. This season is a disappointment. There is no changing that. The Magic didn't race out ahead. The Magic aren't in the race for home court advantage. It would take an incredible finish to the season to be in that category. And even then, even if the Magic were to be like, make a rally and finish like a game short of the 4th seed, we'd be like, okay, well, why didn't they do that in December, January, February? Why did it take so long for them to find it? And how do we stretch that energy out for an 82-game season? This season is already a disappointment. Like, again, I'll say it again. The state of the Magic right now is not good. There's a lot of doubt and a lot of questions about a lot of different elements of this team. And frankly, that is, as much as anything, as much as where the Magic ultimately finish, that is what we're going to try and answer over the course of these last 23 games. It feels like a lame duck season for multiple reasons. The first is that, yes, the Magic have failed to meet expectations. Yes, the Magic don't seem to be a team that's going to win in the first round. Don't seem to be a team that, if they get to the second round, is going to be competitive and look like they're pointing toward a championship. That was always the goal. Like, I tell people this, and I will still say this. The Magic could have won 50 games this year. And, 50 games is impossible. It would be tough. 22-7 would be a heck of a run. The Magic could have won 50 games this year, won their first round playoff series, and then gotten beat by 5 by New York or by Cleveland or even by Detroit now. And I would have come to the same conclusion that I'm coming to today. It does feel like the Magic need a new voice and that the Magic do need a new coach that could take them to the next level. And that discussion was going to be saved for the playoffs. But because this team has struggled so much, it's happening now. And it's happening constantly. It feels like a lame duck season because it feels like that decision has to be made. It does not feel, again, and I love Mose to death. It just feels like we hit the expiration date and we hit this wall, and we hit this ceiling that, instead of bumping through and like continuing to try and break through, bumped our head on the ceiling and fell down a couple rungs down the ladder. And with the money that the Magic are paying this team, that cannot happen. The fact of the matter is, though, while coaching is a factor, and I would agree, the offense needs some new ideas. It's just not clicking. And the levers that Jamahl Mosley's tried to pull defensively haven't been working. I don't think Jamahl is a bad coach by any stretch. Just may not be the right coach for this moment. And the Magic have to assess that in the offseason. And again, it feels inevitable. And if it feels inevitable, the players feel it. And so there's just this feeling that we're kind of waddling through the season. It's a lame duck season. It's like, okay, a decision has to be made. They got to make it. And they're not going to make it now because, again, I've said this a million times. I still think Jamal's the right coach for this team and this moment. I don't think the Magic will be any better for a coaching change. So why upset the apple cart? Team is, again, better than they were last year, better than they were 2 years ago, talent-wise, just not maximizing that talent. I don't think a guy on the bench is going to do any better. But it does feel like it's just time for new ideas, and that happens in the life cycle of the NBA. But it also feels like a lame duck season because the Magic star just isn't good enough. And, maybe it deserves its own episode, and maybe it deserves something like that too. But it's been a bad year for Paolo. Again, I don't want to. I'm banging on the guy because he hasn't played well. And I've said this to a million people too. Every problem that you're talking about, every issue about this team, all your complaints about Wendell Carter, all your complaints about Jamahl Mosley, all your complaints about this, that, or the other guy, it frankly is just dancing around the problem no one wants to talk about. And again, that's simply that Paolo Banchero hasn't been good enough. And it's hard to win and hard to win at an elite level if your star isn't good enough. Now, Paolo was bad last year too. And we wrote it off saying like, oh, he's coming back from this oblique injury. It took him a month to get back. He found his rhythm at the end of the season. 28 points per game after the All-Star break, 58% true shooting percentage. Again, like this year, he has a career high true shooting percentage. Like he is. I don't want to completely dismiss everything Paolo's done this year. He is trying to do the right things. He's trying to be a better passer and playmaker and use his attention well. But at the end of the day, the Magic also need him to score. They need him when everything else is broken down. He needs to be the engine that is still humming. And he has 5 30-point games this year. Desmond Bane has more. And again, that's not the be-all, end-all, I would say. But Paolo's been really inconsistent with his offense, and that's affected his defensive energy. I phrase it this way. Your star has to cover up your mistakes. And at the end of the day, regardless of the injury issues, this Magic team with Paolo Banchero should be above 500. Are they a championship team with Paolo in and Franz out? No. Just like they're not a championship team with Franz in and Paolo out. They need both. But he has not been good enough. And ultimately, whatever issues he has, so plenty of speculation that it's a physical issue. Like my personal theory is I think the oblique scared him. He worked on his midsection a lot and strengthening his midsection, rearranging his weight around his midsection. That affected his lift and his explosiveness. And that's how we've gotten the kind of weird season we've gotten from him. That's not getting solved until the summer. And so again, it feels like a lame duck season. It feels like the Magic aren't where they need to be and can't get there until next year. And that, unfortunately, that story is not going away, and it's not fixable. Like that is the frustrating part. It's not fixable until the offseason. And I'm not gonna sit here and say, pack it in, don't pay attention. And I'm not gonna say that because I need you to listen. That's how I get paid. I'm not gonna say check out and we'll check back in May or check back in June. Again, like the way I think, like I don't obsess with off-season stuff until the off-season. I'm sorry. Like I acknowledge all this stuff is happening. I'm saying, hey, like these are the things I'm flagging for the off-season. My focus as a reporter is on the season at hand and how do we make the most of this team? And I would tell you again, this team is not the team you thought it was. This team is not a 4 seed. This team is not an Eastern Conference Finals contender. They have that potential still. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I believe this team can't escape the play-in. And that's the goal for the rest of the season. As small as that is the goal for the rest of the season. They will, and I'll be freezing cold, take me later if this doesn't happen, please. They will finish with a better record than they did last year. They will not be 41-41. They're going to get to 44, 45, maybe 46 wins. It's all there for them. But they're not the team they want to be. And unfortunately, injuries played a factor. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to get their full complement of players together long enough to build routine, to build anything. And that has just led to a lost season. So, the state of the Magic, it's not good. The bones are there. We believe the foundations are there. But this has been a season that has led us to question everything. To question the coach, first and foremost. And we probably come to conclusions on that and what's going to happen in the offseason. To question the star player. Look, Paolo hasn't had a good year. He's on a 5-year max extension that starts next year. The Magic are married to him. They got to find a way to make it work. We've questioned the center position for sure. I haven't talked about Wendell Carter. We talked about him a few days ago, and since then he's played worse. He's a major refresh after the break. I'm excited for him to get off his feet, get some time to rest. He's never played this many games before. I'm excited for him to reset a little bit. I think he'll play better after the break. And again, I'm a Wendell Carter supporter. You can yell at me for that later. The Magic have lost some of their identity. Regaining that and reestablishing that in the last 23 games of the season is going to be vital. But it's all leading to an offseason where the Magic have to start asking some very big questions. And the Magic have to start figuring out what is our potential. It may not be what we thought it was. And if it's not what you thought it was, that's going to lead to some very difficult decisions. I will say this openly right now. This upcoming offseason is the most important offseason in a long time in Magic history. I'll say this. It is the most important offseason of Jeff Weltman's career, assuming that he is still here. Whoever the GM is, it is the most important offseason of their career. It's going to define their careers. Hiring a new coach and getting that right? Absolutely. The next coach is vital. If you get that coach wrong, the whole project falls apart. Getting Paolo to be the player you need him to be, well, that's on Paolo. It's the most important offseason of his career after this brutally disappointing season. Franz Wagner not having to play international basketball, it's a big opportunity for him to rest, refresh his body, and continue to improve, which he's always continued to improve. I've never worried about that. It's important for Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs to establish who they are. It's important for this front office to feed the rest of the roster what it needs. Its bench is not good enough. They don't score enough. They don't have enough offensive players. But they can't make those offensive decisions and those roster decisions until they get a new coach and understand what he is trying to accomplish or she is trying to accomplish. And again, all those questions in the offseason are big, weighty questions. And they are everything. That is the franchise. That is the future. And so what is looming over this franchise is frankly already an offseason to determine this franchise's future and determine this rebuild's future. And it already feels like it is overshadowing what's left to accomplish this season. And that is the stench of failure. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all of them. You download podcasts to your podcast-enabled device. You can check me out on YouTube as well. Just search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. And also be sure, if that doesn't do it for you, check out our Everydayer Club at lockedonmagic.supercast.com. That's lockedonmagic.supercast.com. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. For those of you on video, we're going to send you the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. That's going to do for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. I hope you have a great All-Star break. We will be back Monday for my annual All-Star Game rant. Plus, we'll talk about how Jace Richardson did in the dunk contest and get you ready for this second half of the season. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.